Oh, hey, I didn't hear you come in. Set up lights and a camera, give me a microphone, and then say action. Because it's just me here. Anyway, why don't you take a seat, like and subscribe, and I can crack open a fresh bottle of news. Oh! The news has gone bad. It's gone bad. Let's have a little bit of taste. It's gone bad. It's bad. It's bad news. The news is very bad. Well, here we are in a pandemic with an unemployment rate of over 10% and states allowing evictions to begin again, while jobless COVID relief benefits are expiring, with no current hope for renewal as the Senate is in recess until September 8th, apparently playing tetherball with Mitch McConnell's jowls, while Ted Cruz helps Mike Pence grade papers and Rand Paul plays keep away with Marco Rubio's pogs, and millions of Americans are left in the lurch, of course. Well, I guess it couldn't get worse. Haha, nope, of course it gets worse, obviously. As there are so many people without jobs, no way to get a job, their COVID relief unemployment insurance expiring, and evictions now resuming, an estimated 30 to 40 million people are in peril of being evicted in the next few months, according to the Aspen Institute, which would be the largest mass eviction crisis in American history. Well, other than the whole genocide of Native Americans. Remember how we did that? It's not the same, but you get my point. Unless something is done, 30 to 40 million people will be left houseless. So, hey, that seems like, bad news. Yeah. Don't worry, though. Everything's apparently fine, according to Mr. President Donald Trump, the president who thinks this whole COVID thing is working out just fine, who also gets tested for COVID multiple times a day and makes sure everyone who meets with him gets tested. But even though us commoners don't have access to Whitman's sampler boxes of COVID tests, we'll be fine. Well, some of us. Here he is explaining it's simply not a big deal that COVID relief is getting cut off for people.
So I think we've done very well. We've had 3 phases. We're into phase 4. We've gotten everything we wanted, and we've also gotten a great economy. All you have to do is take a look at these charts. Our economy is doing good, but we want different things than them. I want money for the people. They want money to bail out Democrat governors and Democrat mayors. Listen to me. My people are doing very good, and my people call me. They're in the office. They call me when it's right. Nobody knows the deal better than I do. When it's right, I'll meet. But right now, it's not right. They want $1 trillion to bail out badly run states. They're Democrat. They're Democrat states. Will something happen? Possibly. But I want to tell you, the country is doing very well right now. We can live very happily with it, without it.
30 to 40 million people facing eviction in the coming months? It's fine. Many people are saying, in fact, we're doing very well. Many people are saying it. Have you seen the charts? Look at the charts. Trump's just keeping money out of the greedy hands of Democrat governors and everyone living in their states, as well as all the relief money for other states, with Republican governors too, and everyone facing evictions. But again, look at the charts. The economy charts, doing very well. Many people saying this. And Trump's people are doing very good. They call him, they're in the office, and they call him. They call him when it's right. Nobody knows the deal better than Trump does. When it's right, he'll meet. Not now, not until September, but when it's right. Not before people get evicted. Later. By the way, did you look at the charts? Many people are saying they're beautiful charts. But let me tell you, the country is doing very well right now. With it, without it, with 40 million people being evicted, or maybe a giant subterranean volcanic eruption with hot magma going everywhere. Many people saying this. Beautiful magma. Doing very well, though. The country is doing very well. My people love the magma. They call me up. The magma is doing very well. So, millions of people are getting cut off of COVID relief. And in fact, many people never received the relief they were supposed to get. Some argue, however, that this is actually a good thing, because financial relief during a pandemic makes people entitled and lazy.
The policy that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are pushing adds an additional $600 a week of federal money to unemployment. We have the unemployment system.
Right, and McConnell wants to take it down to 70% of prior wages.
The problem is, for 68% of people receiving it right now, they are being paid more on unemployment than they made in their job. And I'll tell you, I've spoken to small business owners all over the state of Texas who are trying to reopen, and they're calling their waiters and waitresses, they're calling their busboys, and they won't come back And of course they won't come back because the federal government is paying, in some instances, twice as much money to stay home.
So that was Ted Cruz arguing that offering COVID relief benefits of $600 a week is excessive because that's more than what low-wage earners were earning before. Cruz thinks it's ridiculous we're offering more financial aid. Why can't people just live off whatever their state offers as unemployment? Well, each state has its own unemployment system, and it turns out that not having a universal social safety net makes things complicated. State bureaucracies aren't equipped to have to suddenly respond to mass unemployment, sending out huge amounts of unemployment benefits in the midst of a pandemic. Also, the fraction of wages replaced by unemployment insurance varies by state to state, and they can't quickly change these rates in response to mass unemployment. Take, say, a worker in Alabama, and they make $500 per week, which according to Ted Cruz is enough for them, and they lose their job. Under Alabama law, the maximum unemployment compensation they could receive is $275 per week. But what if their rent is more than that? Assuming they even get their unemployment insurance payment, they're in danger of being evicted without the supplemental $600 relief. So the only way to make sure millions of people aren't suddenly unable to feed and house themselves is to give nationwide unemployment benefits. And since state unemployment insurance systems are built on top of ancient pivot tables created in Excel 95, it makes more sense to just give everyone a standard amount. And if calculating a specific amount for each individual was an option, you'd think Ted Cruz would suggest it. Weird. Wonder why he doesn't suggest that. Of course, even the nationwide CARES Act relief is not managing to reach everyone. So that's, it says cool, but I think it's being sarcastic. But hey, maybe Ted Cruz is right. Financial aid during a pandemic is going to spoil people, especially if it's more than the paltry sum they usually earn during their lowly jobs, such as providing food or farm labor or sanitation or building things in a factory that gets the real hard workers like Jeff Bezos lots of money. You know, jobs for people inferior to the colonel over here, whose job is to tell other people that they aren't worthy of being paid too much money to live. Maybe once people get a taste of the sweet luxury life of getting a basic amount of money to be able to feed and shelter themselves, they'll just refuse to go back to work. Even though technically unemployment benefits get cut off if they refuse to take a job. But hey, does this look like the face of a man who didn't do his research, or the face of Grandpa Munster dressing up as a Confederate general for Halloween, but it's at the last minute, so the fake beard is his pubes? It's both. It turns out that unemployment benefits won't affect employment rates because there are simply not enough jobs to be had. Gee, weird to happen in the middle of a deadly pandemic. But yes, research shows that job vacancies declined at a rate 3 times faster than job applications, meaning that labor demand fell faster than labor supply. Economics! There are simply not enough jobs to go around right now. And in fact, cutting off unemployment benefits may imperil even more jobs because that relief money is getting spent on buying things, you know, like food, necessities, and things to make life livable while stuck inside all day. Research has found that CARES Act unemployment relief actually increases spending for recipient households, which it turns out is actually important to support other jobs. Hey, remember all that jerking off about how important the economy is? And it's so important that we should kill millions of people off with COVID? Well, hey, if we give people spending money, that helps the economy too. Although I guess it is more fun in a sort of heavy metal way to just murder a bunch of people to get the economy going. So what happens when we don't give people financial relief during COVID? Well, we don't have to guess, because it's happening now. As I mentioned earlier, 30 to 40 million are facing eviction. But to put a face to those statistics, here are some posts from the subreddit, unemployed. Here's a post from someone who spent their unemployment and relief money on rent and utilities, can't find a job, and so they're down to their last $18.91. This person says they now can't afford insulin and says that hopefully their inability to pay for food will at least help with their diabetes. They write, "I never worried in my life about politics affecting me so personally, but here it is at my front door." Here's another post from someone in Kentucky who is out of work, can't get a job, isn't getting the back pay they're owed, and says their whole family will be out on the street soon. The poster begs readers to pray for them and to vote. There are many other posts similar to these, from people who are down to their last few dollars, who have been completely abandoned by their government, both locally and nationally, who don't know what to do. Sorry, there's no jokes in this section. I didn't think raw human misery could be punched up. But hey, if you stick with me, maybe I'll play a fart noise or make fun of how Ted Cruz's beard looks like a cat vomited up, again, his pubes. It really does. So here we are. Millions and millions of people face poverty, hunger, and eviction because people like Ted Cruz think that being able to afford food and insulin will make them spoiled. And that means millions of people are about to become unhoused, homeless. So I think it's time that we have a hard conversation about how the US treats our homeless. Because the callousness in this country towards those who are left without shelter and food is really disturbing. And God, I could use like a fart sound effect or something to just, like lighten the mood. No? A slide whistle? My tie, like I'll get a tie, I'll go sproing something. Here we go. Time to face some of the ugliest truths about America. Wowee! We are such a fun comedy YouTube show. Anyway, it's terrifying that so many are facing homelessness right now, because there are forces in the US that not only do their best to ignore the plight of the unhoused, but actively work to subjugate them. Law enforcement, legislation, and propaganda all work hand in hand to create a system of abject cruelty towards the unhoused. We like to call this the anti-homeless brigade of soulless f***ery. I'll soon go into detail about what the Brigade of Soulless F***ery actually does, but first, I want to lay out why it exists. Why is there dehumanizing rhetoric in corporate media against the unhoused? Why do cops crack down on them? Why are there attempts to try to make being homeless literally illegal? Well, there are a few reasons. First, it's to cater to the needs of businesses. Many businesses want to clear away unhoused people, so their customers don't have to look at the yucky poor people. So the homeless must be cleansed. Now, if that sounds weirdly genocidal, it is. Secondly, by eroding away empathy for the homeless and going with the narrative that they deserve it, we remove our responsibility to improve our society. That means, hey, lawmakers don't have to really do anything about all the people left out to fend for themselves on the streets because they're yucky and have cooties. And perhaps most insidiously, this anti-homeless brigade of soulless f***ery creates a carrot and stick mechanism. If you wind up homeless, nobody will care about you, and you certainly won't get any help from the rest of us. So you should feel grateful for any miserable job you have that's keeping you off the streets, even at low pay or dangerous conditions. The carrot, you see, is not being left out on the street, and the stick is being left out on the street. So that's the raison d'etre of the anti-homeless brigade of soulless f***ery. God, I hate raisins. But anyway, let's take a look at some examples of the anti-homeless brigade in action. First, the goofy homeless person news stories. Here's one from the esteemed publication The New York Post. Homeless man smashes bottle over his head in NYC deli. Wow! How newsworthy! A man who seems to be in terrible distress. Do they interview the unhoused man to see why he's in such distress? No. They just interview the business owner who complains about how much these homeless people are disturbing his business. Homeless man arrested for living in luxury suite of Tampa Bay soccer stadium, gasps another headline. That shows a mugshot of a man who was arrested for the crime of finding shelter in a place currently not being used for anything in the middle of a pandemic. The news site didn't interview the unhoused man, to see why he was left with nowhere to go in the middle of a pandemic, or why he might be avoiding crowded homeless shelters, again, in the middle of a pandemic. Instead, they interviewed a spokeswoman for the local police department who said, quote, he got into the merchandise store and was wearing a bunch of team merchandise. He made himself quite at home there. You get it, right? He made himself at home. What's funny is he didn't have a home, and he was arrested for desperately trying to find himself a home in an unoccupied space, otherwise not being used. It's called being hilarious, thank you very much. Now, you might think, hey, what's the harm in an unhoused person using an empty room in an empty stadium as a shelter? You may even ask, hey, why aren't we using empty rooms in empty stadiums to help house all the unhoused people right now, to keep them and others safe during the pandemic? Well, clearly, you just don't know how dangerous and evil homeless people are. I mean, just look at all these stories about homeless people committing crimes. See? Dangerous. Although, I guess it's weird that we only ever point out the housing status of someone accused of a crime when they're homeless. We don't see headlines that say, homeowner starts fire, or homeowner arrested for drunk driving. That's weird. It's almost as if this media practice perpetuates the stereotype that homeless people are inherently violent, or that they're homeless because they're violent. But when you look at actual research instead of the extremely trustworthy New York Post, you'll find that not only are homeless people more often the victims of crime, but providing unhoused people with homes actually decreases crime rates. So, whoa! Wait, you're telling me, or I'm telling you, let's be honest, that instead of arresting homeless people for living in stadiums, which can lead to a cycle of homelessness due to the difficulty ex-cons face finding housing, we can give people basic shelter and necessities, and this actually improves society, including crime rates? What? I pretend to ask. What? I shout sarcastically. Quick, somebody call up Ted Cruz's pubes. Wait, no, Ted's got it. So it seems like these fear-mongering headlines only serve to stigmatize homelessness, as if by making them seem like criminals, we can blame them for all of society's problems, and then fix the problem by arresting them or cleansing them away, which just so happens to align with the interests of the wealthy. But maybe I'm just being paranoid. You know, it's not like police and corporate media jump to blaming unhoused people for like natural disasters before an investigation even occurs, right? Wait. Why'd I get wah-wah'd? What's the wah-wah for it? Did I say something that is immediately going to be undermined by information showing the exact opposite of what I just said? Right. Wah-wah. It turns out that during the 2018 California wildfires, LA officials tried to blame the Bel Air Hills fire on homeless people, despite the fact that a full investigation hadn't even been completed, and nothing had been conclusively proven. Despite this, officials used that as a reason to clear out homeless encampments in the area. Now, for those who don't live in the dry, flammable tinderbox we call California, multiple wildfires happen every single year, from numerous causes, including power lines, sparks from vehicles, weed whackers, basically anything that can cause a spark. It's as if global warming and drought has caused mass drying of vegetation that will inevitably burn given the smallest spark. Weirdly, though, it seems like officials aren't confiscating all cars and weed whackers, and instead only care when the spark is allegedly caused by homeless people, because then the homeless need to be cleared away. And coincidentally, the wealthy people who lived in the Bel Air Hills area were, surprise, surprise, super jazzed at the opportunity to clear away the homeless. Nikki Minor, the vice president of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council, said she wanted LA officials to focus on getting them, the homeless, out, clearing out their gear and keeping them out. I frankly don't care how they do it, as long as they do it. The homeless population needs to know they cannot set up in or near the hills, period. It almost seems like blaming homeless people for natural disasters that are a yearly occurrence all over California is just a pretext to clean them out because they have poor people cooties and they ruin the view from your mansion. I hate it when the suffering of others spoils a good vista. But sometimes the anti-homeless brigade of f***ery doesn't even bother with the pretext. Back in 2019, Boston police ran Operation Clean Sweep, which involved displacing unhoused people, and the police literally stealing their property and throwing it all in trash compactors, including multiple wheelchairs. This is a pattern of cities using street cleaning backed by police as an excuse to displace and destroy the belongings of unhoused people. These street cleaning policies, like Operation Clean Sweep, treats and labels human beings as if they are trash. Not to be outdone, in some places, such as Atlanta, it's illegal to help feed homeless people without a permit. The excuse law enforcement gave for penalizing people for giving food to those in need sounds like the justification behind a sign that says not to feed the pigeons. The Atlanta Police Department police chief told The Intercept, quote, "Our stepped-up enforcement has to do with an increase in the amount of and large numbers that congregate waiting for food, fights, trash, urinating, and defecating in the park, etc. They're dirty. They urinate. They're trash." If this sounds vaguely genocidal, that's because it is. This is the same language used to justify things like ethnic cleansing. When you relabel a human being as filth, you get to do things like steal their belongings and crush their wheelchairs in a trash compactor, something that literally happened. You get to justify installing spikes and barriers to keep unhoused people from sheltering from the rain under bridges or awnings, or from sleeping on benches. You know, spikes, like the way you keep birds off of buildings. Because apparently, as soon as you lose your house, you turn into a pigeon. Although, if that were true, at least lawmakers wouldn't try to have you arrested for sleeping outdoors. Then, when a pandemic hits, you get to justify leaving people in crowded, unsafe conditions out in sweltering heat where people die of heat stroke, even when there are stadiums and hotels and housing that's empty, that could be used to house people. But when they're labeled as trash, you aren't pressured to do that. You get to treat people like trash, which is, I'm gonna check my notes. Always checking my notes. Morally reprehensible. So, as millions of people are at risk of becoming unhoused themselves, it's critical that we stop the anti-homeless propaganda, policies, and police action. But one thing to watch out for is if people try to argue that this mass eviction crisis is different from normal homelessness. There may very well be an attempt to differentiate, claiming that, in this case, everyone is getting evicted through no fault of their own due to COVID. And this is true. But we should question the claim that other unhoused people are at fault or deserve it. People who are left homeless during a pandemic deserve our empathy and help. But why not people who are suffering from mental illness, or people who are neurodivergent, or people who struggle with addiction, something that the field of medicine recognizes as a disease? Or what about people who are stuck in the cycle of poverty? In a pandemic, it's very easy to see how difficult it is to get a job when there are simply no jobs to be had. But this happens all the time in our country. And even when people can get jobs, sometimes wages are so low they can't afford housing. There are people earning full-time wages who are in shelters, who can't afford skyrocketing rent prices as their wages stagnate. By definition, a global pandemic is an experience we all share simultaneously. So it's easier to empathize with people who are in dire straits because of it. But before the coronavirus pandemic, people have been facing their own personal crises, whether it's an illness that wipes out their bank account, escaping an abusive partner with no resources, trying to get a job when you don't have work experience, and you can't get work experience because you can't get a job. The pandemic isn't a special case. It's just one that happens to simultaneously affect us all. To highlight how ridiculous it is to differentiate between people who deserve eviction and those who don't, here's a video of police eviction right now in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what was going on.
We're doing an eviction.
You're evicting someone.
If there's anybody in there.
Is that legal right now?
Yes.
Is it in the middle of a pandemic?
We have about 1,000 writs that we're enforcing, roughly, that were granted prior to the governor's moratorium and have nothing to do with COVID. And we've had our county council review them, and that's what we're doing.
So from months ago, you're now evicting people?
Yes.
Okay, in the middle of a pandemic.
If that's what you want to call it.
I mean, if that's what you want to call it, Mr. Smart Guy. So now we're calling an epidemic that is affecting countries pan-globally a pandemic? Nerd! If you think it's strange that evictions are happening in LA, even though the eviction moratorium has not yet lifted, it turns out if you can't prove that the only reason you can't pay your rent is due to COVID, you're fair game to kick out on the street. And here's another real-life news clip.
What is this place?
Sanctuary District.
21st century history is not one of my strong points. Too depressing.
It's been a hobby of mine. They made some ugly mistakes, but they also paved the way for a lot of things we now take for granted.
I assume this is one of those mistakes.
A bad one. By the early 2020s, there was a place like this in every major city in the United States.
Why are these people in here? Are they criminals?
You know, people with criminal records weren't allowed in the sanctuary districts.
Then what do they do to deserve this?
Nothing. Just people. Without jobs or places to live.
So they get put in here?
Welcome to the 21st century, Doctor.
No, wait, sorry, that's just Star Trek accurately predicting mass homelessness in the context of, hey, wouldn't this be completely unthinkable if we just punished people who couldn't get jobs and couldn't pay rent? What do you think, noted Star Trek fan Ted Cruz, who thinks Captain Kirk is a Republican? Do you have something to say to the people being evicted?
We are paying a whole lot of people a lot more money to stay home and not work than they made on their jobs. And that is terrible.
Cool. Great. We have fun here. It's a great time. Can we play some kind of like a fun sound effect, like a fart noise, a slide whistle, a Tim Allen grunt?
We are paying a whole lot of people a lot more money to stay home and not work than they made on their jobs. And that is
Now that's the well-crafted quality satire that keeps people coming back to the old Cody Shody. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God, it's so bad. I didn't do that. A prop. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We've got a patreon.com/somemorenews and a podcast called Even More News. And here's to water.